This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Hi, hello, and welcome, all you RotoVizzers tuning in for the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown tonight. I am Eric Balkman, your host with the most. You can connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman. That's EricBalkman. You may know me from the Fantasy Football Players Championship, which you can connect with at FFPC on the X, or, of course, myffpc.com, the Better Sports Network's High-Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and, of course, the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour as well. It is November 5th, 2024. I know it's a big night for a lot of people out there. So I know many of you are streaming this or downloading it later, which is cool because we're having some technical difficulties getting our guests on tonight. But hopefully they'll pop on here shortly. If not, you'll put up with me for a little bit here, at least from the get-go. If you are looking for some fun in the FFPC, look no further than the FFPC Weekly Challenge, which is live for Week 10 right now at myffpc.com. You can enter for as little as $35 and win up to $2,500. You can play with 10 teams. You can play with 12 teams with kickers and defenses or without. It's totally up to you. That's myffpc.com. That's where to go, myffpc.com. And you can formulate your team. No stacking, one player per team. It's the exact same format as the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, which we'll be announcing here shortly, probably sometime this month, about what's going on with that challenge coming up at the end of the football season. But we got plenty of action yet to go in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros Championship, Terminator, Super Bracket, everything that we offer with you with the FFPC going forward here. It's coming up on crunch time. I know many of you, if you have not looked at the standings, are starting to look now because obviously the regular season will be over with before we know it, and then playoffs will start, and then the championship round will start, and then we're going to be crowning a pair of $1 million grand prize winners as well. But until then, if you are looking for more action, myffpc.com is where to go for that. I'll do this at the top of the show because I have some time here. Maybe it's because I don't listen to a whole lot of news talk, and I certainly don't want to get political, but I will get a little political here. Obviously, everybody out there tells you to vote, go vote, go vote, go vote. I get it. But I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind is, and I don't want to say a majority, but I think there's a significant plurality of people out there whose lives will not change for the better or the worse, depending upon the results of any of the elections, any of the things that you're voting for, whether it's local, state, city, federal, whatever level. Most of your lives will not change drastically, or significant a number of you. Let's just remember that we, as George Costanza would say, we are living in a society, and we need to make sure that we're still out treating everybody as human beings, because we're all in this together. Not to get too touchy-feely here, but be gracious winners, gracious losers of whoever you supported tomorrow, and let's just move forward and be nice and be kind, and that will be the last thing I say about it tonight. The other thing that happened in the NFL today, or the other thing that happened in the world today, was a significant thing in the NFL, and that was the trade deadline. And we did see some significant players that got traded today, both for fantasy purposes and non-fantasy purposes. We had the Bengals trading for Khalil Herbert with the Bears, and Zach Taylor said earlier this evening that Khalil Herbert might be playing this week, which is significant because it's a Thursday night game against the Ravens. this is a very short turnaround to try to get in. We found out that Zach Moss is probably going to miss the rest of the season. And so Herbert would be the guy who would be backing up Chase Brown. Now, Cincinnati, I think it's the Cincinnati Enquirer reported this. Charlie Goldsmith said that Taylor would not rule out Herbert for this Thursday. The Bengals obviously are going to be looking for more depth here. And not only do they like how he runs the football, but they like how he protects his quarterback, which is huge. And he would be spotting Chase Brown. I still think Chase Brown is an excellent start this week against Baltimore. You're looking at a guy who has been crushing it the last few weeks, right? A guy who has been very, very good and has been an excellent start for anybody out there in the FFPC who's been playing him. This week, it's not the greatest matchup in the world, but I think more often than not, you are breaking ties in favor of Chase Brown. You are playing him this week if you can. He's been a weapon in the passing game. He's been a weapon in the running game. And if his major competition is a guy who is on a different team 72 hours or 96 hours or whatever it is before that game started, I think you need to look at Chase Brown as a significant player this week, regardless of matchup. Khalil Herbert is a guy I checked in my Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship Leagues, which you can register for at kffsc.com. Coming up on next season, which will launch in February for the KFFSC. I looked at to see where he's available, and out of the, I don't know, I want to say I play in almost 24 leagues there. He's available in like 5 of them right now, so he's not available in a ton of leagues in the FFPC. And I should bring up the Fantasy Mojo stats on this. And anytime we cite team ownership, or if we cite ADP or anything like that, it's all due to FantasyMojo.com at FantasyMojo on the X. Darren Armani, the guy who is the godfather of the FFPC Pros versus Joe's competition, is a fantastic resource if you play in the FFPC. Make sure you have a membership to FantasyMojo.com because it is invaluable. I know Darren will say like, oh, it's only, the biggest thing we do is in the offseason during draft season, and that may be the case, but it's a significant tool within the season as well. I can tell you right now, in the FFPC main event, Khalil Herbert is owned in 77% of leagues. And he, in the Fantasy Pros Championship, he is owned in 62% of leagues. So he is available in some leagues out there. I would heavily recommend that you get in and pick him up because he is an injury away type guy. And this is the players that we look at going forward. You think about that championship sprint when you can only roster certain numbers of players on your team. He could be a significant player, not only down the stretch in your FFPC league playoffs, but a guy that could be significant going forward in the championship round as well. Lamar Jackson did not practice today, which is interesting, but it's not. Now, this is the only practice that the Ravens are going to have prior to their matchup against the Bengals on Thursday night. John Harbaugh said this past week, when Jackson missed a couple of practices, that he would be taking rest days over the course of the remainder of the season. And I guess today is a rest day. There's been no qualms about him playing this week. So if you have Lamar Jackson, I would make sure that you're paying attention Thursday night and that you can pick up another quarterback just in case he doesn't go. But as of right now, all signs point to Jackson going. So I feel pretty comfortable about that right now. Let's move on and talk about another trade that went down today. Let's talk about Mike Williams going to the Pittsburgh Steelers from the New York Jets. This is a player that I think has been more bark than bite. The last couple of years, he failed to make an impact in New York, so much to the fact that the Jets went out and acquired Devontae Adams. I think that you have a situation where he may look attractive on the surface, especially for those of you looking for wide receiver depth out there. But bear in mind that the Steelers are a run-heavy team. George Pickens is still the guy there, and they still have Pat Freiermuth there. And Jaylen Warren is starting to look all the way back from that injury that he had earlier in the season, too. So I think Williams is the type of guy, if you really want to keep him on your bench, go ahead. But I think that can be spent with a better roster spot with an injury away type running back right now. So I am not bullish on Mike Williams going to Pittsburgh. I think he is going to be better in the NFL than he will be fantasy-wise. I'm not a huge fan of him, his fantasy prospects. Dom Gazzetti in the chat room right now wants to know what beer is for tonight, Bulky. Well, Dom, I can tell you that I am having, in honor of election night, oh, if it's popping up, the green screen is making it bad. I have it right here. In honor of election night, I am drinking a Choose Wisely. This is a candy bar stout with chocolate, brown sugar, and vanilla, and it comes out of a brewery in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is would have been the western part of the state, way on the other side of the state from where I am, very, very close to Minnesota. So that is what I'm drinking. Cheers to everybody who is toasting one out there as well tonight. Will Reichard, the kicker for the Vikings, has been placed on injured reserve. Make sure if you did have him on your team, as I have him on way too many teams, get rid of him this week and make sure you're picking up somebody else. We talked about, yes, Dom, dessert beer. Yummy. You are very welcome. It's all right. It's a solid, sometimes you run into these dessert beers and they're not all that great. But this one, I think, is it holds some weight. These candy bar stouts are definitely an interesting breed for sure, and one I like. I do like it when you throw in a little chili pepper in there. That's even better. Okay, let's talk about the Raiders and how they made some coaching decisions this week. Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach, and I want to say the offensive line coach all got fired, and they have brought in Norv Turner as an offensive assistant to new offensive coordinator Scott Turner, who is the son of one Norvell Turner, who is 72 years old right now, believe it or not, a former coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I think I speak for Fantasy Nation when I say we are just hoping that the Raiders do not screw it up for Jacoby Myers. They do not screw it up for Brock Bowers. If you want to get Zamir White, Alexander Madison, Trey Tucker, whoever involved, fine. But don't screw it up for Myers. Don't screw it up for Bowers. Those have been the two shining pieces of that Raiders offense, especially Bowers, for the majority of the season. And we want to make sure that they keep peppering those guys with targets. I have full confidence that they will. They know where their bread is buttered. And I think this is a situation where Bowers, for sure, you're still deploying, except for this week because they're on bye. And then Myers, I think in certain scenarios, I think you can deploy him as well. For dynasty purposes, I want to talk about this Jonathan Mingo trade in Dallas. Mingo and a 7th round pick in this upcoming draft go from the Panthers to the Cowboys in exchange for a 4th round pick. Mingo, if you remember, not this past year, but in 2023, he was picked by the Panthers in the 2nd round. CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert now are playing ahead of Mingo, at least, when they're healthy, and we'll find out. I have not seen the results of the MRI for Lamb's shoulder. If anybody has seen that, feel free to post it in the chat here. Mingo in 24 games with Carolina, 55 catches, 539 yards, and no touchdowns. That is what we are looking at here for the Panthers. So let's talk about the Cowboys here first. I don't think that you can be counting on Mingo for anything noteworthy in Dallas. Dallas is a team that is not only going down the tubes in 2024, I don't really foresee anything good happening with them in 2025 either. And if that's the case, what are we doing with Mingo? Lamb is the guy there. Tolbert's been there for the last couple of years. They're clearly playing ahead of him. And they have Wisconsin Badgers own, wearing my UW Badgers sweatshirt tonight, Jake Ferguson, who has been playing very well there as well. Where does Mingo fall in on the pecking list? Not anywhere where you would want to be rostering him, where you have to rely on an injury for the Mingo to get playing time. So, and I'm talking strictly, redraft, you don't want this guy at all. But strictly for dynasty leagues, I mean, I have him in a couple leagues. I'm dropping him. I saw the light at the end of the tunnel in Carolina because I could see a pathway to goodness there because everything was so wide open. It's not wide open in Dallas. feel free to cut him in dynasty leagues. And I think that the Cowboys offense continues to be Lamb first, Ferguson second, and maybe Tolbert third. Tolbert, I think, is fine for dynasty leagues. Redraft, I've been rostering him in some KFFSC leagues where you have to start 3 receivers a week there. So I think it makes sense that you would have that you would have Tolbert as emergency depth there, especially since we are not through the bye week gauntlet yet. Flip side, let's look at Carolina here. Bryce Young is the starting quarterback. Andy Dalton, you would think would be the starter when he's healthy, although we don't know that either. And then at receiver, you have Adam Thielen, who was rumored to be traded at the trade deadline. That didn't happen, so he's going to be the possession guy going forward. And then you have Xavier Legette, and you have Jalen Coker. Now, for Thielen's purposes, I picked him up in a few redraft leagues last week in the hopes that he is never going to be a high floor guy, but he'll never be a high ceiling guy, but he'll be a high floor guy. And when you have a high floor guy in your team, it means you can deploy him out there to make sure he's getting like the 6 for 70 and the occasional touchdown, which I think Thielen is capable of, whether it's Andy Dalton or whether it's Bryce Young, which makes him rosterable and makes him startable sometimes, depending upon what your lineup looks like this week or that particular week. Not necessarily what the matchup is for Thielen, because I think that you don't start him based on matchup. You start him based on what the rest of your squad looks like for that week. Because I don't think Thielen's fantasy value changes wildly from week to week like some players on your team might. So Thielen, yes, roster him. Legette, for sure, roster him. And in dynasty leagues, yes, I still think you need to keep him around. Coker is the interesting guy here, because Coker is a guy that we heard from a lot of fantasy pundits out there, people who've been on the show before, talking up the fact that he is the guy that you want. Where Permar 99, where he's probably watching the election coverage tonight, which is fine. But he was saying like Coker is the guy here, and he wasn't the only one. And then what did we see from Coker? It wasn't a nothing burger. I mean, it was something, but it wasn't all that great. And bear in mind, if you are starting any Carolina pass catcher, whether that's Jonathan Brooks, who might be coming back this week, whether it's Chuba Hubbard, who didn't get traded, whether it's Thielen or Coker or Legette, they are all tied at this moment to Bryce Young. I think Adam Levitan was talking about this on the Establish the Run show earlier today or yesterday or whatever it was. And he was talking about it in a championship sense. Can you really start one of those Panthers receivers when you are gunning for $1 million grand prize in the Fantasy Pros Championship or the FFPC Main Event? That's tough to do. And if you're not going to start him then, or if you don't feel comfortable starting him then why are you starting him at all? And if you're not starting him at all, then why roster him? So go with God with these Carolina Panthers receivers, because I think it takes unless it's Thielen, I think it takes a special situation for people to want to start any of those Panthers receivers going forward. Here we go. Dom Gazzetti. That begs the question, Quentin Johnston or Xavier Legette? And this is something that Levitan tackled today on the Establish the Run podcast. And he was of the opinion that Quentin Johnston is the guy that you would want on your team rather than Xavier Legette for that same reason. You would rather tie yourself to the pass catcher that is going to be grabbing balls from Justin Herbert rather than the guy that is going to be trying to make Bryce Young relevant. And so he was saying Quentin Johnston. If you look at Quentin Johnston and what he's been able to do this past week, 4 catches, 118 yards, he gets in the end zone. That's awesome. We'll take that, right? Before that, he hadn't played since October 13th, 3 for 22. Before that, he didn't play until up until September 29th, 1 for 9. Instead of telling you the dates, I'll just give you his season so far. 3 for 38, 5 for 51, 2 for 44, 1 for 9, 3 for 22, 4 for 118. He's trending in the right direction, right? First 100-yard season, first 100-yard game this season, this past week. But it was, 70 yards almost? More than his highest total before that. And one of the things that has been keeping him relevant has been touchdowns this year, right? He's had 4 touchdowns already, including a 2-touchdown performance against, you guessed it, Xavier Legette's Carolina Panthers. I think he's more fool's gold than anything else. Interestingly enough, there's one dynasty team I have, a private dynasty league I'm in, where I have both Johnston and I have Legette. And I haven't had to make a decision on which of those guys I need to cut, and hopefully I won't. I kind of like to keep these young guys around as much as I can. I am very bearish on both of these guys going forward. So if you're going to keep one between Johnston and Legette, I would lean towards Legette. But ask me tomorrow, I might say Johnston. It's just one of those things. Permar99, glad you're popping aboard. Coker had an in-game shoulder injury. That's why his snaps were down, which, honestly, if you get hurt during the game, I get it. You're not going to be able to churn out much action. And that's fine. And maybe if he would have played the whole game, maybe he would have put up big numbers. But I still think this is a personal thing for me, and apparently for Adam Levitan too. It's very difficult for me to say, hey, I want to roster this guy in order to start him, even though his quarterback is Bryce Young. I could be wrong on that, and maybe I will be. Maybe Coker is the guy that defies the quarterback, and he's out there, getting 5 for 70 and the occasional touchdown, or 6 for 90 on the occasional touchdown. These are all possible things. I just, if Coker is out there and he's cheap and I got the roster spot, sure, I'll take him. But I do have lower expectations for him going forward. All right. That was the Xavier Legette, Quentin Johnston conversation. Oh, that sprung off the Jonathan Mingo conversation as well, which was wild. I think that was all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about tonight. We're still having technical difficulties bringing our guests on tonight, which stinks. It's unfortunate. But we'll go ahead and press on and talk about some of the players I wanted to talk about on the show tonight. In chat room, feel free with any thoughts that you might have, and I'll definitely answer them tonight. Dak Prescott, horrible news for the Cowboys this week, as we found out he is not only hurt, he is going to injured reserve, which means he will miss a minimum of 4 games with a hamstring injury that he suffered against the Falcons. For CeeDee Lamb, this is bad for Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson, really everybody aboard. Now, Cooper Rush is going to take over. Cooper Rush is a guy that I don't have a lot of faith in, and quite frankly, if they put Trey Lance in there, which they could, I don't have a lot of faith in that guy either. Cooper Rush, 60% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns and 6 picks in his career since 2017 in 30 appearances in the NFL. Jake Ferguson and Lamb, I think you still trot out there. You're definitely trotting out there with Lamb. And I think based on how consistent Ferguson has been, I still think that you still have to trot him out. Outside of that, Tolbert, Mingo, Brandon Cooks when he comes back. I mean, it's just, you are playing with fire, right? Those guys, I think, are rosterable. At startable, I don't know at this point, unless you're in a pinch. And Mingo is probably the odd man out there. Now, Permar99, he says, Mingo may have value, little competition there. Yeah, that's true. But I think that it's little competition after the top 2 guys, right? Lamb is going to eat, and Ferguson is going to eat regardless of who the quarterback is. After that, you may be right, Permar. Mingo could be very well the 3rd option there. I just don't know if that's fantasy viable going forward. And so if that's the case, and you need to find out, not need to find out, but if you need to find somebody in a pinch in your lineup and you have to cut Tolbert, you have to cut Mingo. Yeah, I totally see it. Starting wise, I'm still starting Ferguson. I'm still starting Lamb, and we'll see what happens there. Lamb, if he's healthy, we'll wait on the results of the MRI going forward. Let's talk about Jonnu Smith. 3 out of his last 4 games, he's had double-digit fantasy points in the FFPC. He gets the Rams this week, and I may have put in, oh my goodness, maybe this is on me. I may have put in the wrong link, ladies and gentlemen, to our guest tonight, and I'm going to try to fix that right now. and then our guests can talk about Jonnu Smith here going forward instead of me gas bagging. I am sending it to them right now, and hopefully we can get Barney Newkirk and John Laskowski in here right now, the 5-time FFPC main event champions here. So just give me 1 second while I send them this link, and this is totally on me. I apologize for everybody who has been putting up with me this long, but we will get these guys in here shortly, and we will talk about Jonnu Smith. Okay. This is a player that was, we always talk about these tight ends that come out of nowhere, right? From outside the top 12 that end up being a top 5 tight end this week, or tight end this year. And we have some options this year, right? Tucker Kraft has come out of nowhere. Cade Otton has obviously come out of nowhere. And I don't know if I want to say that Jonnu Smith is there yet, but he might be. And he is definitely trending in the right direction. The problem, I think, for him is knowing that Tagovailoa is healthy and knowing that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waller are still out there, how much value can be had from that as well. So I don't want to listen. You guys have listened to me talk about this for 25 plus minutes right now. Let's bring in our guests tonight. They are the 5-time FFPC main event champions. And I do apologize sincerely to the listeners, the viewers, the streamers for sending the wrong link, but we have the right link to them right now. Please welcome onto the program. It is
Criminy sakes, Bulky.
Barney Newkirk and John Laskowski.
Polished off about 10 of these keister stones tonight, buddy.
It is totally my fault. My apologies. Apologies.
I'm on my second bottle waiting. Okay.
That's all right.
I'm all sophisticated.
We're here, baby. We're here. We're ready to roll.
So you got.
I think Balky needs to shave off half of his beard for this FUBAR. What about you?
Well, we need something for sure. Like it's losing in fantasy. You got to give us something. A tattoo. Go out with a dummy doll on a date. I don't give a shit. We need something. Let's go.
Well, I'll give you something. Now, listen. I want to kick this off with. I just talked about Dak Prescott. Ski, I'm going to throw this to you first because I know you guys have Prescott on a lot of teams. I talked about how I think it changes the Cowboys' offense. How big of a drop off is this for guys like Lamb, Ferguson, Tolbert, Cooks, now Jonathan Mingo when you move from Prescott to Cooper Rush? Ski.
Okay, first question: do we need to power through this now since we're late?
No, we will answer this in a normal conversation. Don't be rushed at all. We'll get through this.
Because Barney and I powwowed before this. We got the questions from you. And I looked and I said, the first question's the Dallas Cowboys? We could make a whole show out of this.
Just answer the question. Let's go.
We could make a whole show out of this. What kind of a drop-off? How can it get any worse?
So your opinion is if Cooper Rush is in, Lamb is still going to do his, Ferguson's still going to get his. I guess I question the guys after that.
Lamb may not even play.
I'm saying if he's healthy. He's healthy. Yeah.
Well, I don't. Cooper came in the games that he had to play for Dak before. He didn't do bad, but they're just totally dysfunctional all the way from the top to the bottom. The coach is trashing his iPads. I mean, everything, and it's Jerry Jones all the way. You had a chance to go out and get Derrick Henry in the offseason, which might have alleviated. I don't really give a damn what the Cowboys do. Next question. I mean, they're terrible.
Next question.
They're terrible. All right,
That's the worst team. The worst team there is in football. They used to say it was Carolina Panthers. They beat the Saints this week. They're not the worst team anymore. It's the Dallas Cowboys.
They got their coach fired.
Yes, they did.
Yes.
And the second time he's been fired with Derek Carr as his quarterback too, which is crazy. Barney, let's go to you. Let's talk about Jonnu Smith. I just mentioned this. Double-digit points in 3 out of his last 4 games in the FFPC. He gets the Rams this upcoming week. How do you feel about his prospects as a potential second flex for FFPC players this week?
100%. The Rams are giving up the second most points to tight ends, right? He's an every down tight end. The most concerning part is that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle got 2 targets in the first half last week. Two. And both to Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, you're starting Jonnu Smith. I love Jonnu Smith. I mean, And what's going on with that offense? I mean, you got to be concerned, but I'm not concerned about Jonnu Smith. No, I mean, he's a big part of it. 76% route run. I mean, yeah, of course you're starting Jonnu, man, especially with the tight ends being down this year. You're rolling him out there. You might roll him out as a flex if you got, Mike Gesicki or
Tucker Kraft's on a bye this week. Brock Bowers is on a bye this week.
Exactly. Tucker Kraft or somebody like that. You're definitely
David Njoku. David Njoku's on a bye this week.
I love
as well.
Njoku. Yeah, for sure.
So I mean,
it's the strangest season for fantasy football that we talk about this in over 10 years. We've never seen anything like this. Low scores with everybody.
You got to work. You got to work to win this year. You got to do some work.
Ski, what do you attribute that to? Why are there low scores? Why has it been so weird this year?
We're trying to put a finger on it. We're huge running back guys, and we drafted a few teams depending on where you are on 1 through 12. Who comes your? We've seen idiots letting Justin Jefferson go to pick number 8 or number 9, and it's like, yeah, you can't pass on them, but we're heavy running back guys.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's injuries. You see guys getting knocked out of the games. I don't know if defenses are getting better. I mean, Tua going down kills two of the big guys now. I mean, I think it's just a continuation. The wide receivers are dropping like flies.
Yeah.
And running backs they're taking over this year.
I want to get back to that running back question with you, Ski, in a little bit. Barney, what about the cover 2 aspect, where a lot of teams are just trying to keep everything in front of them, and as a result, scoring is kind of muted a little bit because we're not seeing wide open fantasy football like we used to see like 10 years ago.
Well, again, I think it goes back to the running back thing. I mean, guys were passing on running backs so early. We took 4 running backs in.
Yeah, we're going to read that to them here pretty soon. Yeah, it's dumbfounding.
Well, it is, and it's not. I mean, defenses have to, try to, get into how do you stop a high-powered offense? I mean, you stack the box, you try to, intimidate guys, you hit them early at the wide receivers, dominate teams in the front, and we're seeing it a lot more this year. I mean, and it's forcing a lot of teams to run the ball, and it's working. I mean,
but this is nothing new when you think of Bill Belichick. What did he do every year when he's the best defensive coach? He took away their main weapon. Mm-hmm. This is not something new. This has been going on for a while.
It's not. You play power defense and take guys' best player away, and more times than not, it was a wide receiver. But what do we all start at fantasy sports? You drafted running backs, right? In the early days of fantasy sports, you drafted running backs, and running backs were key, and running backs were gold. We're getting back into that day. If you can't run the ball, you're not going to win. I mean, look what Kansas City's doing right now. I mean, Kareem Hunt, you're taking a 30 or a 29-year-old running back and making him a top 5 back.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, you got to be able to run the ball now, and it is what it is.
I want to get into Jaleel McLaughlin. Speaking of running backs here, Ski, I looked at his game logs here. Has not topped 50 yards in any game this season for rushing. He has had one game of more than 3 catches, and we're halfway through the season. 5 points against Baltimore last week. Is he still worth keeping around for FFPC players as we enter a bye week crunch with 4 teams on bye, where McLaughlin might be expendable?
Barney and I wanted him everywhere this year. We figured he was the back to have in Denver, if you want anybody from Denver in the first place. But he was the pass catching back last year. And at the end, when Williams was not doing anything, McLaughlin came in and looked like he was going to be a stud. But I think here's what I'm going to go at. The best running back on the Denver Broncos to have this year is named Bo Nix. That's it. Bo Nix.
So
survival, baby. So I would keep him. Because Javonte Williams I don't know if he's 100% back yet. I don't think he's had any real huge weeks this year. If he goes down, the rookie from Notre Dame will probably be a power back, and McLaughlin's going to be catching the ball still. So
that's why I bring it up, because Sean Payton said this week that they want to get Estime involved more going forward. And I think the blurb I read, I think it was on Roto World, said, we've heard this from him before. Like, just because he's saying it doesn't mean Estime is going to be more involved. But at this point, it's kind of like, why are we messing around with these other Broncos running backs when Bo Nix has been the guy that has been the threat inside the 10 and sometimes inside the 5 this year, rushing the football in. So it may be fool's gold trying to chase a Denver Broncos running back. We just talked about Bo Nix, Barney. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins, because this is a guy that had a second consecutive huge week. He gets New Orleans this week, right? And I bring up this because New Orleans is a team in flux, and I haven't looked at the spread on this, but I'm betting that the Falcons are still favored, even though that this game is on the road. Is he the type of quarterback that you feel confident in starting, knowing that his number one wide receiver is suffering from a hip pointer right now, and knowing that if the Falcons get out to a big lead, this could be a Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier game this week? Barney, what is Kirk Cousins going to do in Week 10 against the Saints?
Well, he'll be fine. I mean, how can you not start him with what he's been doing the last couple of weeks? I mean, of course you're starting him unless you have other options. But we drafted Cousins in a couple places because of the schedule. I mean, look at 15, 16, 17. I mean, at Vegas, I think in 15. Mm-hmm. They're at home against the Giants in 16, and then at Washington or something. I mean,
it is at Washington, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we drafted Cousins. We drafted a lot of Atlanta Falcons just for that reason. Their schedule's great, but they're coming on right now, and that's a scary offense.
It's, I mean, that's a scary.
You get Pitts involved. I mean, why haven't they? I don't know, but good Lord, Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney he's a beast, man.
He's been great. He's been great.
He's a beast.
And for where you got him in drafts, it's been fantastic to start.
100%. So, and then you got the threat of Bijan and Algier. I mean, good Lord, who has a better 1-2 punch at the running back game? I mean, really, when you think about it, I love what they're doing. Bijan owners are like, oh, well, dude, Bijan gets open because they got that threat of Algier a lot of times, that can pound the ball in there and do what he does too. So I love the Atlanta Falcons offense. I love Kirk Cousins. And of course you're starting unless you got somebody like, Burrow or I want to say Love, but man, after last week, you're kind of worried about Love a little bit. You know what I mean?
The thing with Love,
you're starting.
The thing with Love is, and I'll just touch on him real quick. That dude has not been right since week 1, since he hurt his knee. He's been playing through that. I don't know
100%.
if the groin thing was overcompensating for the knee injury, which that might be true. It might not. I don't know. I just know that even last week against Detroit, he was gutting through it. And you can tell that he had, there was one play in that game, guys, where he had Jaden Reed wide open for a long touchdown. I mean, wide open. And whether, I don't know if he may have not seen him, and that could be the case. But if he did see him, it was purely a case then that he did not trust his leg or his groin and his body enough to make that deep throw down the sidelines to hit him. And I know it's affecting him right now. Bye week this week. We'll see what happens in week 10. They get your Bears, Barney, and we'll see what he can do there. We'll talk about the Bears in a little bit. Before we get to that, Ski, let's talk about the Jaguars ground game. We are looking at the Vikings in Jacksonville this week, taking on the likes of Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. We know the Vikings defense for fantasy purposes has been very good this year. We know they have given fits to opposing quarterbacks, and we know that Jacksonville seems to be an RBBC right now. How do you feel about Etienne or Bigsby? I'm assuming a lot of people will not have both of them on their team. Maybe they do. I don't know. Are either one of these guys starts this week? I mean, I feel like if I can do it, I kind of want to bench Bigsby. I kind of want to bench Etienne. I don't really hold out hope for good prospects this week against the Vikings.
Yeah, they're playing a really tough defense, a surprising defense this year. And Bigsby, of course, is a smasher. Etienne is going to be the pass catcher. But I don't know how healthy Etienne is either.
Right.
They're going to probably be playing from behind, more than likely. Although, I mean, they put up a good fight last week They came back into the game, but I don't know if I want to start. I think we have Bigsby on a few of our leagues. I think we have ATN only on one. We didn't get him where we wanted him, thankfully. But
Thankfully,
we've been starting Bigsby here the last few weeks, and it's just going to be a tough game. They're going to be playing from behind.
Barney, are you with me that like if you have Bigsby, if you have ETN, okay, you can start him, but you kind of are trying to look for ways to keep him on your bench?
Well, I think we drafted so well at the running back position. We don't have that problem. So, I mean, we drafted so deep. I mean, Bigsby's our 5th or 6th. I mean, so we don't really have that option. Our problem right now is receivers, because we did go heavy at running back, and thank God it's a running back heavy season. I mean, so we don't really have that option. That's not a concern for us. But yeah, it should be a concern. Who do you start? You can't. And I think we got ATN and Bigsby on both in like two leagues. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, Bigsby looks like he's running harder. I mean, he just looks like the healthier back, and he's not going to dance. He must have like Roberto Duran hands or no moss. He can't hands of stone. He can't catch a ball. But it's like Derrick Henry can't catch a ball either. But let's try throwing the ball to him a couple times and see what he can do with it. But no, it's.
But when you're the king, baby, you don't need to.
You are the king.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the king here in a little bit, Eric.
We will. Okay. Barney, one other thing I want to bring up, because you mentioned how heavy you went in on running backs this year, was the way that you and Ski draft. Do you feel like you go back and forth between, okay, this is a year we want to attack receivers earlier, this is a year we want to attack running backs earlier, or is it simply just the fact of like you're kind of zagging when everybody else is zigging based on how the draft is going and you just kind of let it come to you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love it because we always like, let's go running or receiver heavy, let's go receiver heavy, and then the running backs keep falling. We're like, can on this guy? Can we really do it? And it happened this year. Case in point, Derrick Henry.
Don't do it
first
yet.
Week, and we're like, he fell to the 4th round. Like,
don't do it yet.
Like the 4th pick
don't
or
do
something.
It yet.
And we're like, there's no way he ain't gonna. I said it. He's falling back to us, and Ski's like, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna do it. I said, if King Henry's there, we're freaking taking him in the 4th round. This is ridiculous, and we did it. And say what you need to say, because we always do this. We do it every year, but we're running back guys. Number one.
It depends where you fall in the draft, and you have your plan. But then the bozos, I call them bozos. Hey, we're paying $1,750 a team or $1,500. What are these guys thinking? They let Jefferson fall to you like at pick number 10, and it throws your whole draft off for a little bit. One thing that we aren't tight end guys real early. We let them go till the late, but we're. We have say if you're in 10 and Jefferson falls to you, we start looking, okay, we're going to draft like 5 wide receivers in a row. And we're going to go because, it's the decade of the wide receivers now. But it always changes in every draft. We don't have 119 or 120 teams like Chad Schroeder does. So we don't get to go through all that. But it's like, it depends on where you draft and what the people around you do. We're shocked. This year we were shocked in a bunch of them just going, he was so shocked I had to slap him a couple times. He goes,
Derrick Henry falls in the 4th round.
After
that first game, I mean, I seriously remember this. We're smoking a cigar and we're looking at it, and he's falling. Ski's like, we can't take him again, can we? I said, absolutely, we can take him again. It's the 4th round, dude.
Well, we're gonna share with Eric here in a little bit why that happened.
Well, okay, hold on. I'll let the cat out of the bag. Let's talk about the Derrick Henry thing. You guys and Ski, I'll let you handle this the way you want to do it. The first draft that you took him in the second draft, like tell me what you want to say about Derrick Henry here.
Well, let's just go through the whole draft period. We draft our main events after the Thursday night game. We never draft early. Mm-hmm. We do the FPC championships. We do those early. We want to see what happens on Thursday nights, and you look at likely drafted in the 2nd round because he had how many points. So every draft that we did early before the main events, before that Thursday game, Saquon Barkley was going like at the 2nd round, sometimes in the middle of the 2nd round. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry was always going later in the 2nd round. And so we got to the Thursday game, they didn't play Derrick Henry. Everybody panicked. And so we had one draft, and it's our best main event team right now. We had pick 104. So we took Bijan Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back in the second round at 209 and took Kyron Williams. At 304, Devin Achane was still there. I said, oh, dude, I guess we're going all running backs, And then on pick 4 and round 4, it was coming all the way back. And we're at 409. And I'm looking at Barney and go, oh, no, they're not going to let the king fall back after one bad game. He kept laughing, have another beer. The guys drafting. I go, no, they're not really going to let the king fall back to us, right? So that's the 4 running backs we started with. At 409, we ended up getting King Henry. And the rest is kind of history. I mean, we're in first place because of that. And then, of course, we had a draft. You're not getting the top wide receivers after that, but we did pretty good. No, and it's just like those are, we think we're fantasy football gods, but sometimes it's the guys around you, what they leave you.
Yeah. And then that's true. I mean, it's one, and you're loving life, and Henry's on for a career season this year too. So, and I guarantee you there's 11 other teams that are kicking themselves for not taking them when they had the opportunity to there. Let's stick in that same division here, Ski, and talk about the Bengals here. T. Higgins, if he can't go this week, Andrei Yoshivas, or you have Jermaine Burton, who I think a lot of people were excited about starting last week until we found out he was going to be inactive. But the drumbeat in Cincinnati has been like, this is a talented guy. This is a guy that figures into our future. We're excited about him. If you had the opportunity, Yoshivas, Burton, or would you just stay away from any receivers in Cincinnati if Higgins is out, not named Jamar Chase, because Mike Gesicki is the right play? How do you attack the Bengals this week if Higgins misses? That's
Mike Gesicki. He's available in a bunch of our leagues, and we're going to try to get him. He's going to be a little expensive, but the thing is I'm not sure what it is with the wide receivers that come out of Alabama. You get like Amari Cooper, who's a classy guy, and then you get guys that want to drive 120 through Las Vegas.
Henry Ruggs.
Or their head games. Burton seems to be in that same mold. I'm not sure if it's just wide receivers. You see a lot of that in the wide receivers that come out. They're just a little bit on the cocky part. You know what I mean? Or they're irresponsible. And everybody said Jermaine Burton's super talented, but I think he had trouble in college as well.
Yeah.
So
transferred from. I think he transferred from Georgia to Alabama. Not that that's a scarlet letter or anything like that, but I do remember that happening too. But to your point, it's Gesicki and it's nobody
Gesicki.
else. Yeah.
It's Gesicki, and we're not going to talk about him tonight, but Kate Otten has the same thing going in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Barney's getting a Kate Otten shirt. That's all he was talking about when the draft was going.
What did I say, though?
This is my man crush.
My new crush. He's been my new crush. He's on 80% of my teams because.
But you have to have opportunity. What did he do before the wide receivers went down there? He wasn't doing all that much, and then now
he ran the most routes of any tight end last year. The most routes. I called it.
The other thing that's I'll just real quick that about getting back to Gesicki here too. Eric All, who I think a month or so ago people were down on Gesicki because they see All's routes run and snaps rising and Gesicki's falling. All's now out for the season too.
Right.
So this is huge for Gesicki, especially when Higgins is out. So I think that's something to be concerned with too. And Barney, to your point, and I mentioned this earlier, I can't remember if you guys were on or not, but I said, there's always this tight end that's not drafted in the top 12 that finishes in the top 12 every year. It looks like it might be Cade Otten. It could be Tucker Kraft and Cade Otten this year, but man,
it's Cade Otten. It's Cade Otten.
With what Cade Otten is doing, and now he doesn't have to worry about Chris Godwin, who was having the best season of his career until he got hurt. Now you have Mike Evans potentially not coming back until week 12 or whatever it is. Otten is a guy that, and you saw it last night in that Chiefs game, like they knew that they couldn't really that Tampa couldn't really attack them at the wideout position last night. They had to go through Otten until that last drive for whatever reason. Sterling Shepard and all these guys are making some great plays, but Otten over the course of the game, he was unbelievable for sure.
Gold. That's money.
Yes, it is money. Now the opposite of money has been I don't want to say the opposite. I'll say the Bears offense this year has not been money in the bank the way a lot of people thought it was going to be. I'll lump myself into this, Barney. I didn't think they did a ton, but I thought they did enough on the offensive line where it was going to be good enough to get Caleb Williams making plays and setting up DJ Moore and setting up Roma Dunze and setting up Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet. I thought the DeAndre Swift ad was really solid as well. For whatever reason, it's gone in streaks and it's been off a good portion of the season. They get New England at Soldier Field this week. Is Caleb Williams and the rest of the offense going to have a good showing against New England in Week 10?
Man, how can you bet on that? I mean, you're at New England. Swift might have a good game. I mean, didn't they just get gashed this weekend by the run? So, I bet on Swift, but man, What did Caleb start 1 for 8 last week? And I mean, he not saying he's a bust, but it needs work. The whole offense needs work. And I think, they've been talking about Eberflus losing the locker room and I mean, that's concerning. You don't want to hear that talk. Mm-hmm. And DJ Moore doesn't look happy. Keenan dropped the ball in the end zone. I mean, there's just a lot going on. I mean, it's not like it's one certain thing, right? So, hey, let's start running the ball. Let's start playing fucking defense like we know how to play and get back to Bears football and see how it goes. But man, no, I'm not starting anybody. I mean, you don't feel comfortable starting DJ Moore. I mean, yeah. Cole Kmet had a couple big games, and then all of a sudden he puts up a zero. I mean, come on. You don't start anybody in the Bears right now until, I mean, of course, you're rolling out DeAndre Swift.
That was what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, you're rolling him out. But other than that, DJ Moore, probably most teams are rolling him out. Just he's DJ Moore. I get it. But other than that, no.
I could honestly. Yeah, I mean, I could honestly see a scenario regarding DJ Moore where he might be on your bench this week. Like
100%. Like, I mean, it's if you got the depth. Well, I don't blame you for doing it.
Think about some of these other guys that you may have drafted behind DJ Moore that I think are interesting this week. You think about Brian Thomas, right? The rookie in Jacksonville. He gets the Vikings
you start
this
Brian
week.
Thomas.
Yeah. You have Darnell Mooney, who we talked about earlier, against the Saints this week. Tank Dell, who granted is going to get Nico Collins opposite him this week, but Tank Dell, Ladd McConkey, who gets the Titans this week too. Josh Downs is another good example. Yeah. So I think like
Johnston. I mean, you're probably rolling him out. Right. I mean, I'm not going to lie. You're probably rolling him out.
The thing is with Moore is, yes, you may not have a better option, but look closely and you might have some better options where Moore could be on your bench this week.
100%.
For sure. But Swift for sure. Yes. Let's talk about the Chargers here, Ski. J.K. Dobbins, I think you're rolling out him that we just talked about. McConkey, obviously against the Titans. Who else is startable for Los Angeles against Tennessee this week? Is it McConkey and Dobbins? Is that it? Or are you seeing anybody else?
Yeah, I think that's the only two. Quentin Johnson, he has a good week, bad week, good week, bad week. I mean, he's a talent. He's only in his second year. But, and I think a lot of that's coaching, too. He's a Michigan boy. He wanted to come in and try to run the ball down everybody's throat. You have a pretty good quarterback on your team. Let's toss the ball around a little bit. So, but I don't know if I trust Quentin Johnson either. Ladd McConkey is the new slot guy. They reminds you of all the guys that came out of, New England, and they make their living in the slot. So,
what's funny is like we look at the Chargers and what that offense could be, and it's like, God, they got the franchise quarterback there. Just get him some weapons. Well, Quentin Johnston was a first-round pick, and McConkey was a second-round pick. So it's like they've invested, and they got Josh Palmer there too as well. So they've invested.
21st overall last year, and he's a big guy. He's coming into his own. He had a problem with drops, right?
Right.
That's it.
And he's fast.
He's not dropping the ball. He's catching it. So
yeah. Yeah, and the thing, like we're talking about this, the Xavier Legette versus Quentin Johnston situation right now. Like, wouldn't you rather be in business with the guy catching balls from Justin Herbert rather than Bryce Young?
100%. I mean,
so
100%.
And that's where it falls in, the Quentin Johnston, the Ladd McConkey, and so on and so forth.
For sure.
Barney, let's throw it back to you for this one here. As we look back on week 9, there were a lot of surprises, a lot of stuff that, I mean, and I'm going to take Saquon Barkley's reverse hurdle.
Amazing, right?
It was amazing. So that surprised me. So let's take that out of the occasion of the equation. Excuse me. What else surprised you in week 9 from a fantasy football standpoint, Barney?
Well, dude, Panthers won for one.
And
Dennis Allen's gone. So there you go. That's the biggest surprise, right? The Panthers got the head coach in New Orleans fired. So, okay, good. But it still goes back to me on a fantasy standpoint. What is going on with the Dolphins? What's going on with – you got 2 of the best receivers in football, maybe the best combo. You had 2 targets. The 2 guys that are top 10 receivers. I mean, Tyreek 3. And Waddle could be a top 10. And you get 2 targets and both to Tyreek Hill. And they're like, everyone's like, it's Waddle. Tua, once he comes back, it's going to change. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is the biggest fantasy concern going forward because, wow, you're expecting Tyreek to be 20 plus a game and Waddle to get to that 16 to 18 a game. And boy, Waddle saved his day by that touchdown. But I mean, that's concerning to me.
Yeah, Permar brings us up in the chat. He brought this up earlier. I'm going to post it again. He said how different the Miami offense this year with running backs and tight ends catching more passes than receivers. And 2 now again, this is just one game that I'm gonna look at here. But Tyreek Hill 4 for 80, Jalen Waddle 2 catches for -4 yards. That's some Xavier Worthy stuff right there. 2 catches, -4 yards, whereas Jonnu Smith 5 for 46, and then Devon Achane 8 catches, 58 yards. He caught all 8 of his targets. He and Jonnu Smith were the 2 leaders in targets and catches this week for the Dolphins, and not Hill and not Waddle. Not what we
So that is concerning going forward because who do you start, right? Can you rely on these guys? Can you not? I mean, that's gonna affect the outcome of a lot of championships going down the road because if you don't start them and Tyreek goes off for that 30 bomb that you're looking for, you're not sitting Tyreek. I mean, it's hard.
You can't. No, you can't. 9. Yeah.
But good Lord.
But was that due to scheming? 2 guys on Tyreek all the time, and the chain's going to be open coming out of the backfield.
I think it is. It's Devin Achane. I mean, he's looked the part. He is the part when he's healthy, and man, he's taken away a lot of that offense.
I want to talk about Ski's favorite surprise this week. You cannot say the Panthers winning or Dennis.
I know, you took my glory right there.
I know.
You know what mine's going to be? The Jets actually look good.
Yeah,
the Jets actually won a game against the Houston Texans.
Texans are garbage anyway. They are who we thought they were.
But Garrett Wilson, it was interesting about this game. Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, both fantasy worthy. And Aaron Rodgers was fantasy relevant this game as well. So, and I think that was the question for me when they acquired Adams, Ski, is Rodgers still good enough to keep both these receivers fantasy, like healthy fantasy wise, where you can still trot them out there this week? And I know Barney's down on the Texans, but to me, at least for week 9, the answer was yes, he is able to.
Yeah, and the other thing is with the Jets too is, and it's kind of depressing. We drafted Breece Hall real early in one of ours, just out of he's not running the ball, but he's a great pass catcher out of the backfield as well. They might surprise people going forward.
Yeah, and they have to, right, in order to stay in the playoff race, they have to surprise some teams going forward. Those are your surprises of the week. Ski, let's throw this to you. I always. Whenever I ask this question on a Tuesday, because I know FFPC waivers haven't run yet, I will ask this in the way that I'm going to request your favorite ad off the waiver wire this week. But if you don't want to give me that, what do you think the FFPC players are going to say is their favorite waiver wire ad? Who's going to be going for the most fab cash this weekend? Or excuse me, Wednesday night.
Wow, that's a tough one. I think I'm going to go Mike Gesicki. Teams that don't have tight ends, and you got 4 tight ends that are off this week. I think he's going to be a huge ad. Now, I started, we're putting in waivers. We do it every week, and there's nobody that really just jumps out at you.
Right. Johnson?
Who?
I mean, Theo Johnson.
I'd rather have Gesicki myself. But.
Oh, I know. Well, of course you would rather, but Theo Johnson and Drake May. I mean, Drake May is one of them guys. If you don't have a quarterback, go out and grab him. This guy looked good. He threw a pick to end the game. I get it, in overtime. But, man, to get him there and he running the football,
That's right.
He's getting a chance. You know who else looked decent?
He's getting a chance, and I love it.
Is Bryce Young. And terrible last year. Oh, he's way overrated and everything. You have no offensive line. You can't run the ball. You have no receivers. The kid looks like a doe in the headlights. Mm-hmm. And this year, he's gonna come around. It's the places where you have. But Drake May, he might be the real deal too.
Drake May,
Bo Nix, we got some young guys coming out.
Go out and get him. I love the way he's running. I think he surprised me. Drake May, Theo Johnson for me. Go get him.
Drake May, I want to bring this. Barney, I'm glad you brought up with the legs. Drake May, from the start. Well, okay, so he hasn't played in every single game, but 12, 38, 18, and then his last 2 weeks, 46 yards rushing and a touchdown, and then 8 carries for 95 yards this past week. Right. This is a guy that's already had 200 plus passing yards in 3 different games as a rookie. He's only started, I believe, 3 games, maybe 4 games, but I think, did he get hurt in the Jets game a couple of weeks ago? He might have.
He might have.
And because he hardly played in that game. But I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that.
Kind of Justin Fields man. I mean,
yeah, very, very similar. Very similar to that. Yeah. And then the other one you brought up, which I'm glad you did, Theo Johnson, who is owned right now in about 25% of FFPC Main Event and FantasyPros Championship games this past week for the Giants against the Commanders. 3 catches on 6 targets. So you look at all the targets in that Giants game. Where did they go? Obviously, Malik Neighbors. He had 11. Second was Theo Johnson. 3 catches, 51 yards, plus he gets in the end zone. Tight end premium format. There is a place for Theo Johnson on your roster. So I love that call as well, guys, for sure. Wow, what a pleasure. I'm so glad that I finally remembered to send you the right link. I do apologize, guys.
It's on you. You owe us beer.
Okay, so now you're going to have to listen to one of our biggest gripes. We've had it for like the last 10 years.
Here's the thing. Go ahead with is this the running back conversation?
No, that's not. We're just going to.
Okay, so
it's going to take 30 seconds.
So give us the gripe, and then I want to talk about the running back too.
Okay, the gripe is we think that the pros are dodging Barney and I.
The pros are dodging.
The pros are dodging us because we have not gotten a pros versus Joes invite in how long. And I think they see how that we draft and how good we're doing, and they're saying, "Don't invite the." We know this is supposed to be random. You get all your money in right away, and then you're.
Buddy.
We have not gotten an invite. And I'm going to call Chris, and I mean maybe you can get a hold of Chris too, and say, "We think you're dodging us."
So I'm looking at this. You have been in it 1 year, right? Ski?
1 year, I think.
1 year.
How long ago was that?
I don't see the. No, I do have the year. It was
15 years ago.
No, it wasn't that long ago. It was. Just give me 1 second. 2016. 20. So 2 presidential elections ago was the last time you guys were in. Yeah. So it's been a while. Yeah. Well, listen. It is. It is. Now, hold on. Barney, were you in it too, separately from Ski? You
Not when we were partners.
Okay, as partners, maybe you weren't. But Ski, Barney, I'm showing you in 2015. You were in 2015 and Ski was in 2016. I don't know how official this table I'm looking at is, but whatever.
I wasn't cheating on you, bud. I promise.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened there.
We're gonna have words
Call
after
me
this.
later.
Okay, call me.
All right, I don't want to start a fight. With what little pull I have in the FFPC, I will let the powers that be know that there is a movement out there among all the content kings and the pros that don't want to play against Barney Newkirk and John Laskowski. So I will make sure.
We thought it might be the team names, the Romosexuals and the
No, it's not. It's not that.
We didn't know.
No, it's not that. It's not that. Let's talk about 2024. As of right now, we're only halfway into it, Ski. This has been the year of the running back this year. Did you guys see this coming, that you went heavy on running backs a lot in your drafts this year? Because it's paid off.
Again,
it's
where you draft at. Like I said, in the early drafts before the Thursday and the Friday game, Saquon was going usually at the wrap, sometimes into the middle of the second round. Barney and I, we said our two guys this year that are going to be the running backs were going to be Saquon and King Henry. Mm-hmm. We said those guys are going to, you got a Joe Mixon, it might be the third best running back in the league. I didn't expect that leaving Cincinnati and going to Houston.
We like Gibbs too.
And Gibbs. I mean, there's a bunch of them. Bijan, we had Breece Hall, Kyron Williams. There was that iffy thing, Kyron going to stay healthy or a chain going to stay healthy. Aaron Jones, what he's doing. He's looking pretty good. Kenneth Walker, Cook, Gibbs. I'm not sure why, if it's the defensive philosophy that's doing it, or you got better offensive lines in front of these guys, because it seems to me, it's not saying it is, the running backs seem to be dominating the fantasy football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do.
And we were lucky that we were in the positions where, we have some where we have.
Look at the guys that you didn't think they were going to come on. I mean, this is the week to pick up the guys like Corum and Benson. And if you're going to win your championship, it might be one of those guys that get it for you. I mean, pick up your backups. Mitchell from Baltimore. I mean, these guys are the guys you got to grab now.
Benson,
you're probably going to win one.
Yeah.
The kid in Buffalo, the backup running back.
Yeah, Ray Davis. What a beast! I mean, we got him several places. I mean, he's a hoss.
Well, you know what they do? You've seen this, Balky. Guys drafts like 6 wide receivers in a row, and then they're drafting all the backup running backs, hoping that somebody gets injured, and that's how they're going to hopefully make their season.
This is where you get your running backups. So put the bids in, get them now, man.
And Ski, that strategy works if the starters get hurt. I always see this every year, and like I'm guilty of it too. I don't do 6 receivers in a row, but sometimes I'll start off my draft with 3 or 4 receivers or 4 receivers in the first 5 rounds, and then it's like a waiting game, right? Like we have to wait. Like, okay, let's go. I need somebody to go down here for these guys to. And if they don't, man, you are scrambling, and by the time somebody does go down, you might be out of it. B, you don't know if the guy behind him is going to be any good. And C, you don't know exactly the volume he's going to get. So you are kind of flying a little bit blind. It is a risky proposition to go into a draft like that, which is why I usually try to do balance as much as I can, so I can pivot both to running back, receiver, and sometimes tight end in my drafts, where I try to be as flexible as possible. But man, if you go rigid, like you guys did in a lot of your running back drafts, or in a lot of your drafts with running backs, and then it pays off, you really are on a pathway to goodness to try to get that $1 million grand prize in both the main event and the FantasyPros Championship. So congratulations on your success so far. I'll be rooting for you. I always love having you guys come on this show, and obviously the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour with Farrell as well. It's always a treat to talk shop with you. I wish you nothing but the best going forward in all your drafts this year. And hopefully you take down one of those $1 million grand prizes, and we can have you back on to talk about it real soon. Yeah, well, we've done this before, and we'll do the official invite. If we win it, you're going to be joining us in Bora Bora. Okay. I love it. I love it. Oh, I love to hear it. Beers on you, baby. But I've told that you pay for the trip. I'll pay for the beers. I'm good with that. I am good with that. That's a lot, baby. That's a lot. John Laskowski and Barney Newkirk, 5-time FFPC Main Event League champions. Be good, guys. We'll talk with you again real soon.
All right, brother. Thank you.
We'll see. Yep, you bet. See those guys in Bora Bora for sure. Well, maybe not for sure, but hopefully. That is going to put a wrap on the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown tonight. I want to thank John Laskowski and Barney Newkirk for hopping aboard. MyFFPC.com is where to go, myffpc.com. If you're looking for action in the FFPC Weekly Challenge, check that out. Enter for as little as $35, win up to $2,500 in those in that competition. 10 players or 12 players on your teams, whatever you want to do. If you want to play with kickers or defenses, it's totally up to you. You can pick the format for you. No stacking, only one player per team there. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that, for the FFPC Weekly Challenge. We will be live again on this channel as well as the Better Sports Network this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Ryan Kirksey from RotoBaller will be joining me for the best darn preseason, Thursday night preseason game. Pregame in the business. I can't say it, but I promise you the content is awesome as we go into that huge AFC North showdown between the Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals, which will have massive fantasy implications. We'll tell you what to do if T. Higgins misses full week of Deontay Johnson. What do you do with him and Zay Flowers this week? A lot of questions that need to be answered. Ryan Kirksey from RotoBaller will help me answer it on the show 7 o'clock. That is this Thursday at 7 p.m. On the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. Then this Friday, we are joined by one Chuck Root on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, a guy who is killing it in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship and the Fantasy Pros Championship as well. Chuck will join Farrell Elliott and I at 10 p.m. Friday night on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour right here on the same FFPC channel, and we will talk everything Week 10 with him. Chuck is awesome. He is a former $500,000 winner in the FFPC Playoff Challenge, so we will talk with him and pick his brain on Friday, and that will be your shows this week, ladies and gentlemen. For John Laskowski and Barney Newkirk, I'm Eric Balkman. Remember to like, subscribe, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Thursday night. Happy election night, everybody, and remember, no matter what happens in the election tonight, be nice, be kind. We still have to, we're all living in a society. We all have to treat everybody like real people and human beings, which is what they are. Let's just remember that going in to tomorrow, regardless of what side you're on, and the world will be a better place. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will talk with you again Thursday night at 7 o'clock with myself and Ryan Kirksey from RotoBaller. Be good.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.